Chapter 5, Private University in Southern California. Kim and Trey loved the private university. Not only were the classes sizes smaller, the average class size was 30 rather than 300. It was much easier to access the professors rather than go through graduate students who are teaching assistants, and there wasn't the constant threat of professors, graduate students, and classified staff going on strike. As a result, the quality of education was much higher. The rest of Kim's stay in Los Angeles was a whirlwind of classes, changing her lifestyle. She all but stopped eating processed food. When she had to eat something processed, she did the research. Does it contain white flour, white rice, white salt, white sugar, and what amount? From a nutrition class at the private university, she also learned that the research claiming monosodium glutamate is not healthy was actually due to the salt industry feeling threatened by this Asian import, stealing their market share. Once again, Kim felt lied to. There was also one more thing she learned. She learned a lot about the local penal code. Gay men are not allowed to solicit in any public restroom in this part of California. It brought her back to her women and gender studies course, talking about the fact that women, gay, and other minorities had to fight for their right to use public restrooms. She shook her head in disbelief. Moreover, the law protects criminals, not business landowners. It wasn't any wonder why California was going downhill. The law is protecting the wrong people. Kim shook her head. And when classes resumed at the private university, she learned one more thing about their library. Trey introduced her to ARPANET. ARPANET was one of the precursors to the internet. It focused on research. When she talked to the librarian about how to find research about endometriosis, she was taken to a room that was full of microfiche film. After being taught how to use the machine, Kim went to work finding research articles about the condition. In the 1920s, there were about 5 articles. In the 1930s, there were about 10. 1940s, over 100 articles. So what happened in the 1940s? 1950s, over 600 articles. 1960s, over 1,000 articles. 1970s, over 1,300 articles. 1980s, over 2,500 articles. So you can see what happened in the 1980s. Not surprisingly, Kim was overwhelmed. However, when she went back to the librarian helped narrow her search to a few select articles. After Kim asked how much it would cost to obtain a copy of each article, she thanked the librarian. She went back to the bookstore, bought some oversized 3-ring binders and protective sheets. Oh, back then they had a machine, copy machines, and each copy machine had a little, like a vending machine. You put little coins in there, and then you make copies based on how many coins you put in there. So she needs coins. When she went back to the bookstore, she bought some oversized 3-ring binders, protective sheets. Next, she carefully organized each article. Although she didn't understand the statistics part of each article, she carefully read the introduction and concluding paragraphs to get the gist of each article. At this time, she made a mental note to reread the articles as she takes statistics classes later on. Kim did the same with cystic fibrosis. As long as she is friends with Peter, she needs to learn as much as she can about this condition as well. Later on, research did confirm that the recessive gene was in play. If one person has one recessive gene, they will not get the disease. However, if they marry someone who also has a recessive gene, then there's a random chance that their child might have the condition. Kim surmised that both of his parents probably have the recessive genes and both passed on to him. So later on, she learned that his grandfather had a baby sibling who passed away, and his mom had a toddler sibling who passed away. So 2 recessive genes. At the same time, Kim was determined to find another way to diagnose and treat endometriosis. So going back to endometriosis, the first article she read was published back in 1983. So this is 7 years prior. It said that the MRI imaging scan can depict endometriosis. So there is a possible way to diagnose the disease without surgery. Also, she read a separate article that said a small bowel obstruction can be caused by diseases such as endometriosis as well as surgery. So yeah, to get diagnosed with endometriosis, you need surgery. So yeah, that's a double whammy right there. She spent the rest of the day learning as much as she can about this condition, as well as looking for alternative treatment. Because at this point, with Kim, surgery is no. It's not just the cost. There's always risk. Even a healthy person going through surgery, sometimes they don't wake up. So she also found articles about the possibility of using acupuncture to treat dysmenorrhea, pain during menstruation. She also found an article back in 1977 that said physical therapy might also help patients who have this condition. Before she returned to her temporary home, she went to the university's library card catalog. She found a newly published book by Mai Nakano titled Japanese American Woman, 3 Generations, 1890 to 1990. After she went to the librarian's counter, she checked the book out. She made a mental note to read at least 1 chapter per night. That would give her more than enough time to read the entire book before she needs to return to the library. That evening, she gave copies of the research articles to Peter for him to look at. As she started her new diet without processed food, she felt differently. At the university's student health clinic, she had them do some blood work. Much to her shock, she had Candida albicans infection. So they had her take some medicine to clear it up. Almost immediately, she felt better. The next time she went to the university's library, she checked out some books to learn more about this infection and what she needs to do to make sure it doesn't return. She saw a pattern. This diet also requires a person to refrain from eating any food that contains white flour, white rice, white salt, white sugar. Again, she felt lied to. She was growing up. She was told growing up to use these ingredients. At this time, she wondered what else they lied about. After Kim told Peter about her infection, Peter thanked her for the intel. They would make certain to maintain social distance while the medicine treats the infection. At this time, he introduced her to his professors, physical therapists. They assessed her and started treatment for dysmenorrhea. Since her store-bought heating pad wasn't taking the edge off her monthly pain, they tried various far-infrared heating pads. Much to her relief, this worked much better. And she needed to use less over-the-counter medicine. With far-infrared heating pads, the heat goes deeper through the tissue, whereas the standard over-the-counter ones, they only heat the surface of the skin. So this one goes deeper. They did the same thing for the TENS machine. They also advised her to consider using a sauna. They didn't need to say that twice. Although she had a lot of grief about a former public university in San Francisco, she did, however, love their sauna. They referred her to the physical education department. They have a sauna that she can use. She made a mental note to use the facilities at least once a week. And they made an appointment for her to start manual therapy. Almost immediately, she found a significant amount of pain relief. At this time, she asked for the price. They whipped their hand away. They're getting federal research grant monies to publish research. They'll include her in a journal article. At this time, they had her sign some informed consent forms. When she returned to her temporary home, she told Peter he made a mental note to talk with the future clinic staff about using this method to get money to help them with the cost of running the clinic. Around this time, she went to the local income tax office to file for income tax. Much to her relief, she got a refund since she paid rent as she was displaced by the earthquake. Friday evenings in the family room, Gavin, Jonathan, Peter, and Trey got together after dinner and played chess together. For example, they had board games such as checkers and chess. They also had air hockey, a billiard, foosball, ping pong table in the living room. She could tell this was how men bond with each other, plus they learned how to communicate with each other by playing games together. And each night everyone said goodnight to each other. She could tell that it was healing the men. Kim was stunned at how different private university was from public university. The quality of education was much higher. There wasn't a constant threat of faculty, graduate students, and classified staff going on strike. Instead, everybody knows students are paying the full cost of their salary and benefits, so there isn't any break in the instruction. As a result, students can focus only on schoolwork. Kim can also tell that there wasn't any financial waste going on. The school maintains a strict budget and everyone does their part to keep costs down. Kim relished every day she spent at the private university. She wasn't surprised that Gavin, Jonathan, Marina, and Peter chose to live and study there. If her parents could afford it, she would have gone there instead. Kim was in awe. Also, while she was a student there, she took advantage of their student health clinic. After getting some blood work done, she did the general health check. The doctor noticed that she's not getting enough oxygen to her brain. After sending her to a specialist, she was diagnosed with asthma. Kim wasn't surprised. Many children her age were exposed to secondhand smoke from one or both their parents in public places. So Kim will not be surprised if this also changed her DNA as well. To save money, her parents burned wood in the fireplace without any air filters. They lived in old homes that were built with asbestos and lead-based paint. They live in a part of California that uses a significant amount of chemical pesticides from front lawns, golf courses, ag industry. Her former hometown's hospitality industry also brought in a significant amount of tourists who were dependent on gasoline-powered vehicles. While she was growing up, the local highway was moved from the center of town to her neighborhood, so she was exposed to a significant amount of automobile exhaust. When the speed limit was raised from 55 miles per hour to 65, it made air pollution worse. When she talked to the general practitioner, she was referred to an environmental medicine specialist at the specialist. They did more specific blood work. Not surprisingly, they did find quite a number of toxins in their system, including lead-based paint, so they started her own detoxifying regimen. During this visit, Kim talked to the doctor about the Silvestre, Italy incident, as well as the possibility that she might have endometriosis. Long story short, the doctor got federal grant monies to conduct research on the possible connection between the two. Until he got funds, Kim paid on a sliding scale. She made certain to keep the receipts for her income tax. At the end of the school day, Peter picked her up. When she told him everything the doctors found, he was worried. He knew that she had endometriosis, however, it never occurred to her that she might have accumulated a lot of toxins from her former hometown. At this time, he made a mental note to talk to the future clinic staff about adding an environmental medicine specialist as well. On Tuesday, March 20th, news spread quickly about what happened to Cuban-American singer Gloria Estefan and her tour bus. I'll try to go into graphic detail, but what happened, her tour bus was en route. It was during a snowstorm, and there was a multiple car automobile accident. The windshield of her tour bus, the windshield cracked. There was a broken piece of glass everywhere. Her husband was standing behind the driver, but luckily the driver was able to grab his shirt, so he won't fall down. In the back, their son, and their tutor was also thrown, because tour buses, not everybody is seat belted down. At the time, they thought her son was okay. They didn't do any x-rays on him, but several years later, they found out that he had actually broken his back, which is scary because he played sports, and anything could have made that injury worse. But for some reason, he He didn't know about it, and his playing sports in the fact that he broke his back. The worst of the injuries was Gloria Estefan. Sadly, she was, her back was her spine was broken, and she was in severe pain. Luckily, there was a lot of bystanders. Some of them went to the tour bus. One of them told her, "No, don't move, stay still." And it took several hours for first responders to get to her. And this time, the windshield's broken. Cold wind from the snowstorm is coming into the cabin. And some people believe that cold air kept her swelling down, because if it was a hot day, that swelling would have gone out of control and it would have been a lot worse. Luckily, she also, from her accident, she did come across a person who knew exactly how to perform surgery on her spine. But yeah, it required several months of rehabilitation, and when her husband saw the surgery scar, he lost it. It is a miracle that she survived, because if no one was there to keep her still, and that right surgeon wasn't there, her career would have ended, because it was really, really bad. Automobile accident that she had. But anyway, every night before they retired, all the friends, they pray for the entire family's full recovery. Kim also bought her latest music CD, and she played it with her headphones on while she continued to study music and public health. So the whole world was just united in that, and knowing what happened to her, and hoping that everything will be okay, she'll be okay, our family will be okay. Also around this time, Kim checked her mail at her temporary home. She had jury duty. When she did research, she found out that the Superior Court gets their names and addresses from the Department of Motor Vehicles. She was confused. Wouldn't it be more efficient to get the data from the local elections office? Everyone who's registered to vote are citizens. In sharp contrast, there isn't any way to tell which drivers are citizens. Long story short, she called the number on the notice, and she wasn't selected for jury duty. So, during spring break, there was a surprise visit. One of her uncles and aunts visited her at her temporary home in Los Angeles. Although her uncle was visibly upset, her aunt did all the talking. They needed an explanation of why her parents suddenly moved. Kim needed extra time to carefully think through what she was going to say. Since Kim had to stall them, she offered them to stay in Los Angeles for one more day. Although they already booked the flight out for that evening, they called the airline to postpone their return for the following evening. Peter got a couple of futons, laid them on the floor next to Kim's bed. Peter also discreetly asked his housemates to leave their shoes by the front door for the time being. Much to his relief, everyone complied. While everyone was making a temporary change, Peter took Kim, her uncle, and aunt to a Japanese restaurant. At this time, Kim told Peter to call his father, because his father took the red eye to Los Angeles. So when everyone was making a temporary change, Peter took Kim, her uncle, and her aunt to a Japanese restaurant. After they ordered their food, they used this time to catch up. Kim was embarrassed that her Japanese was at the level of a 5-year-old. Fortunately, Peter is bilingual, so he filled in the gap. So it also helped that Peter knew what Kim wanted to say before she said it. So that also helped. Next morning, Mr. Alloway arrived on the red eye from Japan to Los Angeles. He led the meeting with help of Mr. Alloway, because Mr. Alloway also speaks Japanese. Kim carefully explained to them exactly what happened. There wasn't any way for her parents to know that both of them need to work in order to live in this country. As a result, after Kim and her mother moved to California from Japan, they faced the grim reality that their father's income is not enough. So her mother created some arts and crafts, sold them at the weekly garage sale. After Kim's younger sister Emma was born, it was even more difficult for both of them to make ends meet. As a result, after Emma started kindergarten, her mother had to work part-time. There was one hiccup. Emma failed kindergarten. Once Emma finally started first grade, their mother had to work full-time. Both of her parents are exhausted after coming home from work each day. So Kim stepped up to cook and clean as best she could. At this time, Kim asked her uncle and aunt, please consider forgiving her parents. They did more than their best. They had no way of knowing that the United States economy will crash, enter a deep recession. When they arrived, she asked them, please wait until summer. Her father just got a job with a multinational corporation that has a satellite office in Tokyo. As a result, he needs to give his new employer at least 2 weeks' notice to quit. Moreover, they're paying for both their parents to go to school in San Francisco to make them more marketable. And they just paid their younger sister's tuition at a private high school. And they're constructing new homes for her parents. So she carefully asked her uncle, please wait until summer vacation. She requested that they have both of her parents and younger sister see a dentist in Japan. Her parents also need to see an eye doctor if they need prescription glasses. They make certain they get their glasses there as well. That should be 2 sentences right there. And she asked them to send all 3 of them to a private onsen to recharge their batteries since it's been several years when they last went on vacation. Afterward, Kim asked them, please send all 3 back to the States. Her uncle shook his head. He said he could see something's clearly wrong with Emma. And he sees that her parents are keeping her completely dependent on them. Moreover, Emma must not shame the family name. Her parents failed, so they would keep Emma till they could figure out how to get through to her. When Kim looked at Mr. Alloway, he used his skills in communicating Japanese to reason with them. He already paid, for the private high school. It would be a waste to not use it. Much to everyone's relief, her uncle acquiesced. However, after they arrived in Japan that summer, they're going to keep Emma there. And Mr. Alloway looked at Kim. She reluctantly nodded, so he reluctantly nodded in return. This was not what they wanted. Emma needs to stay in the States. She had just been diagnosed with autism. She needs to continue treatment. Her uncle shook his head. Japan is aware of this condition, and they have no prescription medicine to treat it. He would have Emma live in a big city where they have access to specialists, and he will make certain Emma does not take any drugs. That sealed the deal. If there was a silver lining to all of this, Kim wasn't the only person who saw Emma as a troublemaker. Her uncle also saw that as well. So if Kim is the only person who is, sounding the alarm, then maybe something's wrong with Kim. Maybe Kim doesn't realize what's going on. However, since Kim's uncle also saw it, she knew her uncle would not be swayed by Emma's tears. He practices only tough love on his own kids. He would do the same with Emma. So Kim put Emma into her uncle's hands. Moreover, this will force their parents to see Emma from a distance. This chance meeting might help her parents see Emma for who she really is. And it will give her parents a chance to see what life will be like as empty nesters. So at this time, Kim was cautiously optimistic. At best, her parents would do the right thing, even if Emma doesn't see the light. So while Peters gave Kim's relatives a tour of Los Angeles, including a stop at Disneyland, Peter's father had a heart-to-heart talk with Kim. He apologized to Kim for not getting to her before her uncle. He too was blindsided. It was in San Francisco. He could have mediated. Kim shook her head, told him that she knows her uncle. He has a hot temper. There's no discussion when it gets to that point. On behalf of her family, She apologized to Mr. Alloway for the inconvenience. It was wrong of her to impose on the Alloway Murphy families. She should have asked her relatives for help. He shook his head. She's exactly the right person for Peter and the entire Alloway family. He told her that he's paying for the rest of her university education and housing. He and his wife were devastated when she had a miscarriage and Peter was diagnosed with CF. If it is true that Kim has a spirit of their unborn baby, he will not take no for an answer. She reluctantly nodded. At this time, he asked how much she had left in her bank account. After she gave him the exact amount, he told her he'll create a trust fund for her. She's to use a trust fund to pay the rest of her education. Rather than pay him back, it is her job to pay it forward. Kim's job is to help the next person who needs help. Kim nodded. On a positive note, he said that he's been continuing to talk to administrators at the Public University of Berkeley. She told him that she had a classmate from high school who would try to get in. He had straight A's, perfect SAT scores, participates in the clubs, volunteered at the local Meals on Wheels program. And they deliver meals to homebound seniors and other people who cannot go to the grocery store. He also had a part-time job at the local fast food restaurant. So he's also getting paid. Long story short, he didn't get in. Peter's father said that they're stricter about who they let into their university. As a result, they have a higher graduation rate, 75%. Compared to her university in San Francisco, the graduation rate is 7%, less than 10%. The private university in Southern California is full of students who are serious about school and graduating on time as well. So private universities, the graduation rate is a lot higher because it's a lot more difficult to get in, a lot more expensive, so students are more likely to do whatever it takes to pass all the classes and graduate on time. This was in sharp contrast with her former university in San Francisco. She met so many classmates, kept changing their majors. Others are attending because their parents are paying for it and forcing them to attend university. Kim would not be surprised if some of them would use the Loma Prieta earthquake, as an excuse why they failed the classes, why they dropped out. As long as Kim continues to do more than her best at the private university in Los Angeles and the public one in Canada, Mr. Alloway will be able to secure her a transfer to the University of Berkeley. Kim thanked him. Around this time, Peter brought her uncle and aunt back to their temporary home. After they had dinner at the local American restaurant, Mr. Alloway flew back to San Francisco with her uncle and aunt. While their uncle and aunt were checking into the airline terminal, Kim discreetly pulled Mr. Alloway aside, told him now's the time to tell their parents about Emma's other two diagnoses. Because Emma's not just autistic, there's other things going on. He discreetly said that he thought about the same thing. With Emma staying in Japan, he would be free to talk to her parents about Emma without Emma eavesdropping. So Kim nodded. This was a very important conversation. Her extended family in Japan needs Kim to talk to them first. Instead, she talked to Master Alloway. Kim made a critical mistake, and she had to make things right. The last thing she needed was her parents to realize that she's the one who spilled the family garbage onto a stranger and expected him to fix things. Moreover, she realized that she has an ally in her uncle. Both of them came to the same conclusion about Emma. If Emma's left to her own devices, she would become a troublemaker or worse, homeless, and there isn't any such thing as free nursing home care. And Kim had to realize the cold hard reality that Emma might not be someone who can be rehabilitated, the con artist part. Emma already had both of her parents wrapped tightly around her finger. All she had to do was cry, and her parents instantly caved. She shuddered. Kim was done. In less than 1 year, she became temporarily homeless. She experienced her uncle's hot temper for the first time in her life. It wasn't any wonder that both of his children did whatever they took, graduated from the public university in Japan, and do whatever it takes to stay employed. One of them is working at Japan's top hospital, and the younger daughter is working at one of Japan's leading marketing firms. At this time, Kim made the mental note to be more proactive in the classes, identify when she's in danger of failing. The last thing Kim needs is to end up like her sister and become a hypocrite. Toward the end of the week, Peter drove Kim to the public university's main office in Long Beach. That's the chancellor's office. He had set up this very important meeting. There's a lot of things she needed to get off her chest. Beforehand, she put together statistics from various universities in California. She started by carefully thanking them for their time from their busy schedule. She apologized for the inconvenience. She began by pointing exactly what they did correctly in the aftermath of the Loma Prieta earthquake. She also talked about the other campuses, because the San Francisco one wasn't the only one that was badly damaged. There was one in Santa Cruz and some other ones in the Bay Area. So she also talked about the other campuses that were also affected, how each one responded in comparison. Then she spent the rest of the meeting stating what they need to do to improve. She included the fact that less than a quarter of incoming freshmen graduated on time. She used the private university in Los Angeles as a comparison. She also talked about how the co-ed bathrooms are set up. The fact that there aren't any partitions between the bathtub and shower, even though this is a co-ed bathroom. She also included asking them whether or not they considered changing the on-campus meal setup. Rather than buffet style, instead she recommends paying based on what you eat, as well as switching to certified organic produce, relying less on processed food. Because obviously, like if you go to a restaurant and you see processed food, obviously you'd be like, well, what's the point? I could just go to the local grocery store, buy frozen TV dinner, and microwave it. So she ended it by stating she will attend the University of Canada the following year. She closed by thanking them for the time and her hope that things will get better. On a more positive note, Jonathan introduced Kim to various members of the Japanese Brazilian Committee of Los Angeles. Kim was in awe of the diversity of Americans of Japanese descent. She was also introduced to their cuisine, which fuses Japanese and Latin American dishes. Around this time, the local farmers market started selling faba beans. Kim was over the moon. She loves these beans. So after she bought a couple of pounds, she and Peter worked together to shell 1 pound. They composted the shells into the community compost bin that was in their garden. Once water was in the pot boiling, Peter sprinkled a dash of sea salt. They boiled the beans until they were fully cooked through. Upon putting them into an ice bath to stop the cooking process, Kim drained the water. They watched a movie together whilst eating the cooked beans. Also, as Maria was farther along in her pregnancy, Kim listened and took copious notes about Marie's journey. Los Angeles has birthing centers and hospitals. Although Maria wanted to have her baby at the birthing center, her prior surgery that diagnosed and treated endometriosis put her pregnancy and childbirth at high risk. So she will have her first baby at a local hospital. Before the semester ended, Maria's parents from New York City and some members of her extended family from San Francisco flew into Los Angeles to help her prepare for her first baby. This was Kim's first meeting of Maria's parents. Her father is Irish American from San Francisco. Her mom is half Chinese, half Irish from Cuba. Since she's been living in the States for over 3 decades, her accent is more Manhattan than Cuban. After Maria took her last final examination, she went to labor. Gavin took her to the hospital. Fortunately, there weren't any complications. Mother and newborn doing fine. Their son's name is Marcus. As long as there aren't any complications, she might be able to have her second one at the birthing center. By then, they'll be living and working in San Francisco, and San Francisco also has birthing centers. Kim looked forward to learning more about birthing centers, as well as how they pre-screen patients and what the protocol is in case something goes awry and they need to pivot to a hospital. During the academic semester, for one of her classes, Kim went to various birthing centers and hospital maternity wards in Los Angeles. Beforehand, she gave them a list of questions ahead of time so they can prepare the official response. She learned a lot about childbirth in this country, the services they provide, how they prepare the patients for their newborn, and what contingency plan they have in case they need to refer patients to a specialist for complications during childbirth. Moreover, she was aware that there are options for expectant moms in Los Angeles. They are not forced to go to a local hospital. It was a shame their hometown is too small for a birthing center. They could save a lot of money if there weren't any complications from natural childbirth. Moreover, at the birthing center, there's a significantly lesser risk of getting a life-threatening infection from a hospital. Sadly, around this time, there was bad news. The first one was Gloria Estefan, the second one. Puppeteer Jim Henson passed away months after signing a contract with Disney. Although his wife and children took over both of his companies, the Jim Henson Company and the Jim Henson Foundation, it was the end of the man, the myth, the legend. Everyone who bought a puppet was inspired by his work. Now granted, he wasn't the first to bring puppets into visual media. There's Maria Perregos Topoggio from Italy, Sherry Lewis's Lamb Chop, and so on. He revolutionized and made a brand out of it. The Muppet Show, Sesame Street, Star Wars. She read a news article that surmised that a contract with Disney might have hastened his passing. In all honesty, Kim was not surprised. A contract that big carries a huge amount of stress, even if both parties completely understand and agree to the terms and conditions. That night before she retired, Kim took out her prayer beads and prayed to his family during this difficult time. Author's note: decades later, in 2025, NASCAR race car driver Kyle Busch passed away from the same disease, pneumonia with sepsis, months after winning a lawsuit against a major life insurance company. You can tell I'm a NASCAR fan. So this case made Kim extra careful each time she has to sign a contract. Since this may or may not be Kim's only chance to be in Southern California, she also uses time to go to South Central Los Angeles, talk to various leaders of the African American, Latin American, and South Korean communities separately. Kim was genuinely worried about what was going on. For decades, African Americans, because you have to keep in mind, after the Civil War, some African Americans headed west, and some of them landed and made their home in South Central Los Angeles. So for decades, African Americans were dominant. As a homogeneous community, they understood each other, they're on the same page. But starting the Second World War, the United States government sent 110,000 Japanese Americans to prison, military prison. And these people, they were farm workers, so all of a sudden nobody's harvesting the fresh fruits and vegetables. So the same United States government that sent them to prison, the same government decided to import workers from Mexico to replace them. So 1940s, World War II, and then 1950s, we had the Korean War. After the Korean War, South Koreans immigrated from their country, and some of them settled in, again, South Central Los Angeles. So as a result, African Americans saw both groups as a threat to their turf. Now, from the Korean perspective, they're small business owners. They saw some African Americans shoplifting at their place of business. However, each time they told the political leaders and law enforcement, help us, the political leaders and law enforcement told them to just stand there and let it happen. After multiple shoplifting incidents, they were distrustful of all African Americans. Moreover, Kim also needed translators to speak with the Latin Americans and South Koreans. So there's also a language barrier. You can see that. After a few decades of unresolved racial tensions, Kim can tell this was an issue that is too big for one person to resolve. Author's note: in sharp contrast, there was an African American mayor in Northern California who publicly shamed each person who was arrested and booked into the city's jail. As word got out about what the newly elected mayor was doing, their crime rate did go down and stayed down during his administration. So what's going on in Los Angeles was clearly a failure of political leadership and law enforcement. However, this was not the only example of what's going on. For example, the wildfires of 2025 are going back again to more current issues. The wildfires of 2025 could have been either prevented or dealt with while the fires were still small. If local and state governments took drastic measures to focus on prevention and minimize the impact of wildfires, then it wouldn't have gone to the big issue that it became with the Pacific Palisades neighborhood. So, going back to 1990, Peter asked Kim if she would like to finish her university studies at the private university, because this is an option here. Kim shook her head. It wasn't a matter of if. Something bad's going to happen between the African American, South Korean, and Latin American communities in South Central Los Angeles, but when. And Kim needed to be as far away from Los Angeles when it finally exploded. Although he was disappointed, he was not surprised. He already saw that she already had her eye on the goal. Do whatever it takes to get into Berkeley. So, and then Peter did the same thing with Trey, and Trey also, because Trey is listening to what Kim is saying, what Kim is finding out about what's going on. Trey also declined because he's part African American. So not surprisingly, he too has razor sharp focus, do whatever it takes to get into Berkeley. So looking back at San Francisco, it was sad that they were using gentrification to, air quotes, fix the problem they had with crime. All they're doing is moving the problem from one location to another. They're not confronting the source and coming up with a solution there. So after Kim completed the final examination term papers, Kim went to the registrar's office to request and pay for transcripts to be sent to University in San Francisco. She also kept a copy to give to the Public University of Canada and Berkeley. And she had one more copy for the So she also filled out the administrative form as well. She went to University Student Clinic as well as a specialist to get a copy of her paper records. Kim thanked the temporary home for keeping her safe, helping her on the academic journey. She also went to the bank to close her account, get her documents out of the safe deposit box. Next, Kim and Trey packed to return to San Francisco. Before Kim left the estate, she gave Peter one more gift, a Dada doll with both eyes unfilled. He knew where this was going. He filled one eye with the wish that his sister's pregnancy and delivery would be safe and both of her unborn babies would be healthy. The reason? His sister spent part of the first trimester in the hospital earlier that year. The official diagnosis was hyperemesis gravidarum. This wasn't normal morning sickness. Both her and her unborn baby's lives were in danger. And there was a possibility that his favorite author, Charlotte Bronte, died from this complication. So, Kim knew, Peter's worried about his sister up in San Francisco. So, she gave him that doll. So, while Trey drove his car on their way there, they stopped by Palo Alto. Trey introduced Kim to a Whole Foods grocery store. This was exactly what Kim needed, a grocery store that sells certified organic fresh produce. When she asked the store manager when the store opened, he told her, she was told, 1989. Until they opened the store in San Francisco in 1996, she went to the local farmer's market to get something as close to Whole Foods as possible. And all of us know what happened to Whole Foods. It's now owned by Amazon.com. Then they stopped by the Smith family to drop off her belongings. Then Trey returned to the family-owned and operated hotel, the Murphy. While Kim is preparing for her trip to Europe, she went to local Department of Motor Vehicles, County Department of Elections, Social Security offices to update her address to the one in Canada. She also stopped by her former alma mater, that former San Francisco University, to get her transcripts to be sent to the Public University of Canada, as well as one more copy to hand delivered to the Public University in Berkeley. So questions, comments, constructive criticism, ask for clarification, let me know. And next time I will go over summer Europe and pivot to Canada. Take care.